I'm curious about the capabilities that Gusto Cofounder has right now.
One of the things that I learned from using OpenClaw and tools like Claude is that they're really powerful, but they have what I call the blank canvas problem. They don't really have any initial use case that you can use them for. And the reason why I think Gusto is in a unique position is because we kind of like solve that blank canvas problem. And we even suggest to the customer, like, I notice you do this. What if we automate this for you?
How do you go from prototype to production in such a rapid amount of time?
Unconventional way that this came about. We didn't have any Figmas. We didn't have any stand-ups. We didn't track any work in Jira, believe it or not. Our median time to a code review in the 1,000 PRs that we wrote in the last 10 weeks was 9 minutes.
Wow. That's crazy. More and more businesses are being started. What does that future look like for these businesses? How are they going to operate in the future? What changes? Hey everybody, I'm Paul, the founder of BrowserBase, and I'm here today with Eddie Kim, co-founder and head of technology at Gusto. Today's conversation is going to be all about how companies are building with AI, and Gusto just launched Co-founder, this exciting new product that's going to really eliminate a lot of the busy work I have to do to manage my company, which, you know, as a founder myself, that's super exciting. Eddie, thanks for being here. I'd love to kind of dive in. When we think about Gusto so far, tell me a little bit about the story in the company and some of the milestones that you guys have accomplished, and what co-founder is and what it means to you as a co-founder of the company, of something that's been building for such a long time.
Yeah. Well, Gusto, the company, started 15 years ago, and we started in payroll. We were actually called by a different name. We were called Zen Payroll at the time, and we just wanted to build like a much easier way to run payroll for a small business. A few years after that, we started expanding into other parts of running a small business: benefits, HR, time, scheduling, tax credits, and things like that. And I'd say like all the last 15 years has kind of, in my mind, built up to this moment of launching Co-founder, where I think we can leverage a lot of those capabilities that we've built for small businesses and not just make it easier to run through a web UI, but actually completely automate it through Gusto Co-founder. And that's the real concept of Gusto Co-founder, is really that you can tell Gusto Co-founder all of your business processes, and it's going to run it for you on a periodic basis and just check in with you whenever it needs help.
Yeah, so if I'm imagining what I do a lot of my times, I might have to submit PTO, right? And I have to log into some software, select the dates, and say, that's when I want to take PTO. You're saying with Gusto Co-founder, I can just add it in Slack or talk to it somewhere, and it will take care of all the admin tasks I have to do to run my business?
Yeah, exactly. Let's say you have an employee who requested time off. You could have Gusto Co-founder automatically approve it for you based on the parameters that you give it on how you would make a decision on how to approve that time off, right? And if you don't feel completely comfortable with that, you can have it ask you for approval before it actually approves it on your behalf. Or you can just let it know that, have it let you know whenever there's some time off that needs to be approved. Like, it's really up to you on how much control you want to give it. But yeah, the whole point of it is to like automate as much of it as possible so that you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, and that kind of touches on the challenges with building AI agents right now, which is like what needs to be approved and what doesn't, the human in the loop behavior. It's nobody has built agents perfectly yet. It's so emergent. I'm curious, one, I mean, when you started building Co-founder, what was that process like? Like, what was the team like? And two, how did you design it for what you think your customers need? Because your customer base is not necessarily the most AI native customer base. It's a 300,000 small businesses all over the world.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like, the idea came about, I would say earlier this year. It started percolating in my head when I had heard about this thing that we've all heard about now called OpenClaw. And so I was kind of curious. I went out and bought a Mac Mini and I installed OpenClaw. It was a pain in the ass to set up, as most people who've set it up have experienced. But there were parts of it that really blew my mind. Like, I really loved how you can chat with the OpenClaw through Telegram. And that sounds like pretty simple and obvious, but like until you actually experience how magical of an experience that is, like it's hard to like grok like how important that is. And so that I think sort of laid some seeds in the back of my mind on like how can we bring some of these concepts to small businesses? Because if OpenClaw was for like the tech forward consumer, and you have Claude Code for the engineer or Claude Cowork for more enterprise, I wanted to build something that was specifically built for small businesses based on some of the things that I loved about OpenClaw and some of the things that I hated about OpenClaw. So that was like kind of the original like seed of an idea. And it wasn't until I actually went on vacation like a couple months after that, and I actually got stuck in London Heathrow because I missed my connecting flight back to San Francisco. I had to get booked on the next flight, and I had 5.5 hours just stuck at the airport with nothing better to do. And so I use that as an opportunity to take out my laptop and use Claude Code to actually prototype what that could actually look like. And by the time I had to get on and board my flight, I actually had built a functioning prototype of what ultimately became Gusto Cofounder.
And when you have this prototype and you're showing it off internally, Gusto's a huge organization, a
Yeah.
ton of products. How do you go from prototype to production in such a rapid amount of time? What has to change and what kind of team do you have to build for that kind of stuff?
It was like the most unconventional way that this came about. Like, this was obviously not on any roadmap because I had just kind of like prototyped it while I was waiting for my flight. And I just started to show the prototype to a few of the engineers and designer ICs that I had normally kind of stay in touch with. And some of them like really started to like what I had built, and we were riffing a little bit on the idea. It evolved a little bit. It was like kind of like, okay, that's really cool, but what if we tweak this little part about it? And eventually, what happened was we decided to get together one week in one of our offices in Denver, Colorado. We got into a room and we just whiteboarded out like a sketch of what the page could look like, what Gusto Cofounder could look like, both from a UX perspective as well as from a data model perspective. And it was that day where we wrote the first line of code. We actually threw out the prototype that I had built, and we started a brand new code base. Actually, it was a brand new pack in our existing monolith that we started to build out Gusto Cofounder. And it was a team of 4 engineers, myself included in one of those 4, and 1 designer. Everybody, first and foremost, being a software developer, writing code, opening PRs, getting it reviewed, merging it into production. And we did that for 10 weeks. We didn't write any documents. We didn't have any Figmas. We didn't have any stand-ups. We didn't track any work in Jira, believe it or not. No retros. The only thing we had was a perma-Zoom, meaning we had a Zoom room going all the time, and most people would just hang out in that room, even if they're coding. And that's kind of how we felt connected to each other. If someone had an idea for a feature, they would actually write the PR first, open the PR, and then show it to everybody in the Zoom room. And we just discuss it right then and there. If we decided that's something that we think was valuable to add, someone would do the code review right then and there. I just looked this up, our median time to a code review uh, in the 1,000 PRs that we wrote in the last 10 weeks was 9 minutes.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And that rapid iteration is necessary in the age of AI. I mean, you're prototyping quickly, you're building fast, but you probably also want to improve it, quickly too. How are you thinking about co-founder and evals and making sure that it's you continue to hill climb on its capabilities to better serve your customers? What's the signals coming in, and how's your team not only getting this thing, it got out to prod, it's out there, people are using it. What makes it better in the next few weeks and months?
So obviously, like, we use it ourselves. We find out where the sort of losses are and like kind of write evals to reduce those losses and kind of make it perform better next time. In the middle of this like 10-week like sprint that we did, around week 5, we actually invited about 20 or so of our customers that are part of an early access program, and we actually gave them access to it. And then it was kind of funny. We got them all in a room in New York, and it was like 4 engineers and 1 designer like taking notes, just observing as they like open this thing up and use it for the first time. And we learned a lot about what things that really resonated with them and what things didn't really make sense. And then we took the next 5 weeks, the last 5 weeks of the build, to actually iterate on what we saw from those like 10 or 20 or so customers.
So you're saying Gusto runs on Gusto?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely parts of Gusto that run on Gusto. I think it's really important to dog food our own products. Um, the thing with Gusto Cofounder is that you don't necessarily even have to use it for things that you normally do on Gusto. Now, of course, that's where most people start. They use it to automate their payroll processes, their scheduling, their time approvals. I saw a customer that set up an automation in Gusto Cofounder where it has them text them anytime it's projected to rain today. And that's because their business in particular is dependent on the weather, right? A lot of businesses that are kind of brick and mortar have dependencies on the weather. And so that's important, actually turns out to be an important thing for them to know. And so Gusto Cofounder like literally sends them a text message every time it's projected to rain. And they could even do things like, email their customers that are coming in for that day and let them know to dress warmly or bring an umbrella.
And this could be my super agent for running my business. I'm curious about the capabilities that Gusto co-founder has right now and where you see demand for the next things you want to add in the workflows that maybe customers are asking that they can't do
Yeah.
yet, but you think are possible as you kind of iterate on this even more.
Yeah, one of the things that I learned from using OpenClaw and tools like Claude Code is that they're really powerful, but they have what I call like the blank canvas problem. Um, they come with all these great AI capabilities, but they don't really have any like initial use case that you can use them for. It's kind of like left up to the installer or the user to figure out, okay, what do I put this on, right? And it turns out to be like a much harder thing to solve. And it's not a technology problem at all. Even after I set up my OpenClaw, after 8 hours of struggling with the installation, once I finally got it all set up, I didn't really know what to do with it. And I still kind of use it as like a question answer or like a glorified search engine. And I think that's one of the problems with a lot of the what we're seeing come out in the AI world today. Gusto co-founder, and the reason why I think Gusto is in a unique position is because we already do all of these hard things for our customers that happen on a periodic basis. So a company with hourly employees has to run payroll every single Thursday, right, to pay their employees on Friday. And so it's very obvious that like those are the first things that we can solve for them like out of the box, right? We kind of like solve that blank canvas problem. And we even suggest to the customer like, I notice you do this. What if we automate this for you, right? And it kind of comes out of the box with a bunch of things that's actually useful for.
Yeah, I've seen that from our customers, like the nudging of them of what is possible. People are always looking for use cases because when you're
Right.
trying to understand how to use new technology, you kind of want to know what best practices are. And it's even a more magical moment when all of a sudden the AI is telling you how to improve. It feels
Yeah.
like it really kind of knows your workflow. And because Gusto has built all of these primitives so far, I almost imagine you as like an infrastructure company in a way where you have like the payroll, the HR, all of these systems, and now you've built the layer on top. I guess
Yeah.
that leads me to ask, like, is the future of Gus, is it going to be a little more headless? Like, will
Right.
people be interacting primarily through co-founder in the future? What do you see as the vision for that?
I think that is a very possible like vision of what the future looks like. I think Gusto becomes more about the capabilities that it provides and these automations that customers have built that leverage those capabilities. And I don't think that you even see customers logging in, opening up a web browser and logging in to use Gusto much at all, right? They're texting with Gusto through Gusto Cofounder, or they're slacking, right? Or Gusto Cofounder, anytime that it needs the business owner's attention, it's sending them a message proactively, right? So it's almost like imagine that you have um, literally a co-founder in your company, right? That's like taking care of all the operational aspects of running your business, and you just text them whenever you need something, or they text you whenever they need something from you. That's the sort of experience that we want to deliver. I think that is the kind of what the future looks like. And that's actually exactly why we called it Gusto Co-founder.
Yeah, it's not an assistant, it's somebody that actually is working alongside you, collaborating every single day.
Yeah.
Like as a solo founder myself, I definitely could use that support. So I'm excited to get on board and play with it. Maybe kind of transitioning to the customers that are using it right now. Gusto's customer base is all types of businesses, and some are more AI native than others.
Yeah.
And one big belief I have is about letting AI interact with the real economy. We're here in beautiful San Francisco.
Yeah.
Everyone here is pretty AI built.
Right.
They might be
Yes.
running OpenClaw.
Yeah.
I can imagine the plumbing company or the painter in Iowa might not be as AI native. Have you seen a lot of interest from those types of builders? And what do you think about positioning Gusto Co-founder for those types of customers?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're essentially like, I mean, I would not use this term in, um, Main Street small business world, but like, it's kind of like the claw for small businesses, right? If something like an open claw is for the kind of tech bro consumer and Claude Code is for enterprise, I think Gusto Co-founder is basically how we bring AI that everybody has been hearing about and reading about in the news, but for some reason has never really materialized in front of them, right? And I think that's because there is a small sliver of this world that actually is using AI in this agentic way that we talk about. But the vast majority, 99.9%, are still using it as a glorified search engine. And I truly believe that that's not a technology problem. It's more of this like blank canvas problem of like, you need to take a company that has built incredible capabilities in AI, but then also has spent decades building incredible capabilities on sort of things like payroll that are like real problems that we face every single day as small business owners, and combine those together.
Yeah, the models are there, the primitives are there, the demand is there. Now it's all about putting co-founder in the hands of these people and educating them. Do you find any AI aversion, or I mean, you're creating a category here. You're educating a lot of new types of people. This might be the first AI app that they use.
Yeah.
What's some of the questions or the ways that you frame co-founder to people who aren't as AI native, and how does it end up being successful for them?
Actually, we found that like a lot of small businesses are quite AI forward. Maybe not to the extent that we see here in San Francisco, but I think 30% of small businesses have reported that they're using AI to help grow their business, right? And many small businesses, I think, are more, in my mind, open to AI because they're much more resource constrained. They see how AI can really bring more efficiency to help grow their business, help them to do more with less. And so I think that is like a tailwind that we have. But again, many of them are still using it as like helping them create content as a search engine. And so many of them are kind of like stuck at this sort of like question answer type interaction model of AI, and they haven't like broken through to the like it's actually agentically running parts of my business for me. When we bring some of these like concrete ideas to our customers, we can run payroll by reading your Google spreadsheets, bringing it in, calculating it in this just the way that you would calculate commissions, tips, and bonuses, and then running payroll for you. I think they really get that because I think they really understand how this is a repetitive thing that they do over and over again every week and week out, and doesn't really add a ton of value except stay compliant with the law and pay their employees, like stuff that is important and necessary, but doesn't necessarily differentiate their business.
Yeah, I didn't even think about this before, but I imagine there's so many companies out there in the world that probably are using spreadsheets and maybe even writing down pay slips and signing checks still. And I imagine that co-founder might be one of the nudges for them to modernize their systems. It might not be something that exists for customers that are already using Gusto, but probably new customers too. Do you imagine that co-founder is going to bring you new types of customers or accelerate their onboarding to Gusto from existing systems?
I think so. I mean, we haven't done this yet, but one of the things that we want to do is actually allow customers that are not even incorporated yet to use Gusto Cofounder, right? Because many people have a side hustle, they have some business that they're running. Maybe they don't have like a official like LLC yet, or they haven't hired any employees yet. But there are still many things that Gusto Cofounder can help them with, right? And when the time comes, we can also help them with entity formation, getting an EIN, and hiring and paying their first employee. But there's no reason why Gusto Cofounder can't help with all the things that come before that. And it's important to remember that like the journey of a small business doesn't really start with just hiring their first employee. There's like so much that has to happen and go right before you get to that point where you're in this like fortunate like position to actually hire someone to help you out. And I think Gusto Cofounder can help with all of those things.
Yeah, I want to maybe tie this back to like what would you say the broader mission of Gusto is, and how does co-founder kind of align to that mission and maybe even like push it further than it was when you started the company,
Yeah.
years ago?
Our broader mission is really to grow the small business economy. Anything that helps a small business, like, and we can help, like, that's what we feel is within our scope and mandate as a company. And it's not just employers again. It's I think anyone. There's about 5.5 million employers in the U.S., but they're like tenfold more businesses, right? Sole proprietorships and entrepreneurs and hustlers. Like there's so many more of those, and I think we want to help all of that. Those are all considered small business. We want to help. We want to help all of them.
Yeah, I remember seeing a chart of like new businesses registered during COVID and just this huge spike, and imagining like maybe in this AI first world, there are more solo entrepreneurs. There are more different types of ways that
Yeah.
people are you creating value in the society. Maybe stepping back and looking a little broader as you think of Gusto's role in providing this infrastructure for those builders. What do you think the next types of businesses will be? Because we might be doing things completely different. Maybe programming will be something we're doing a lot less of in the future.
Yeah.
Maybe it's more content creation. I mean, have you seen trends in the types of people that are building businesses on Gusto, and maybe ones that have a lot more tailwinds from AI too? I'm sure there's a lot of really
Yeah.
interesting data there.
Yeah, I don't know if we have noticed anything different in terms of the types of businesses getting started, but you're absolutely right that there is data backing, and this data comes from the government on how many small businesses are getting started. And I think this year it's actually 10% more than the previous year. And this is measured by what's called high propensity business applications. Like How many people actually apply to the government to register their business, right? And so we've been on a multi-decade upward trend, and this trend has accelerated massively post-COVID. And I think there's some technology shifts that have happened, and there's just some societal shifts that have happened to cause this secular trend to emerge. One is like over the past 20 years, I think it's been easier and easier to start a small business, right? I think Gusto has been part of that story with making it easier to pay your employees, right? Just through a really delightful, easy to use web application where you just run payroll. But you have, companies like Etsy and eBay, marketplaces, Shopify, to create storefronts and sell. You have it's far easier to take payments and get paid, open up and set up and use a bank account. All those things have made it like easier over the past 20 years to start and run a business. And now with AI, I think it's discontinuously easier, where these things that maybe you was very time consuming, building a website or coming up with products, doing competitive research. Now, if you have a really good handle on how to use AI, you can do all that in a lot less time than it used to. And so I think there's just this trend of it being the technology making it much easier to start a business.
Yeah, I mean, this might be the age where we see the first single person unicorn company, right?
Yeah.
With all of the tools at your disposal, you can get more done with less,
Right.
and AI is making that easier and easier. I've noticed a trend where there's a lot of companies that are building their own agents. Ramp has a procurement agent now, and I kind of like want to ask, why are all these companies building agents? Like the inspiration was from you and using OpenClaw, but strategically, it seems like more and more, large companies are building agents that kind of help manage all of the systems. What's the strategy for Gusto there?
I definitely see that other companies doing that as well, and I think it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of, especially if you have a repetitive process that you do day in and day out, there's no reason why you should be logging into a website and clicking ultimately like a HTML button to submit a form to a web server somewhere that updates a database column, right? Or a database row on a column. So I think that's the reason why we see a lot of SaaS companies start to build AI agents. Now, I think what makes Gusto Co-founder different is that I think we've sort of really broadened what our agent can do. Like, I think we get that a small business is not running their entire business just on Gusto, right? At least not yet. And that they have parts of their business that's running in mind body, right? If they're like a massage spa or a Pilates studio, and they have parts of that's running in Notion or parts of that's running in Google spreadsheets. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll sort of bring together the data that sits across all these systems. And that's where the human needs to get involved because they need to stitch together these processes that span across multiple systems. And I think we recognize with Gusto Co-founder that like, in order for this to be truly useful and truly differentiated from everything else that's out there, we need to like be able to connect to all these other systems so that you can tell Gusto Co-founder to do whatever it is. And even if some of that data or actions sit outside of Gusto, we would still go out and do that for you.
And what about the systems that don't have a connector? Like I imagine in your business too, there's
Yeah.
so much of the legacy internet. How have we been thinking about Gusto Co-founder for if I have to go procure something from the legacy vendor that only has a website and maybe a simple form to ask for more screws or something?
Right.
What's the longer term vision there?
Yeah, totally. For those that are more technically minded, like you can bring in your own like remote MCP service. You can add your own MCP URL, but even not, as you point out, like not everything has a MCP server as well, right? And so there's a lot of the world that is kind of like you can only access it through a web browser. And while we don't have this today, one of the things that we want to build is for Gusto Co-founder to literally like open up a web browser and do the thing that you want it to do. My favorite example of this, by the way, is, I try to be really thoughtful about, sending a gift, flowers, whenever it's someone's birthday or work anniversary. And Gusto Co-founder today, because we have all that data, can remind me when it's someone's birthday coming up or someone's work anniversary coming up. But what if I wanted to actually send flowers to someone anytime they hit their work anniversary, right? Um, wouldn't it be amazing if Gusto Co-founder can automatically do that end to end? Meaning that, as far as I'm aware, there is no MCP server to order flowers, but it'd have to like find, your favorite flower e-commerce site. My personal favorite is Farm Girl Flowers. Open up a browser, order some flowers. We have the address of the employee, right? So they could put in the shipping address and actually send the flowers, right? And that way, like you don't even have to go through this like periodic process of ordering the flowers yourself. I think that would be a truly magical experience and something that is very close with Gusto Cofounder.
Yeah, I think it's so cool that it's not just an agent for managing Gusto, it's an extensible tool to really fit for every type of business. And I imagine the biggest challenge with a product like this is that there's so many different types of business and the one size fits all agent probably isn't appropriate. You have to have some tailoring. Maybe shifting gears a little bit. I mean, there's probably a lot of companies that look at something like Co-Founder and say, wow, like how do we transform our business to be AI first? I'm curious, what's been the mandate internally about being an AI first company and what had to change in terms of the behaviors and practices? It started with a small tiger team that's worked really well,
Yeah.
but I'm sure you're going to extend that even more within your business. How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I mean, us, like many companies, we see the power of AI and how it can make us more efficient, build more and better things for our customers. And so we are also like really trying to transform and have everyone kind of lean into AI to build better products for our customers. I think I learned a lot from Gusto Co-Founder. It really opened my eyes on what is possible when you have a small group, high trust, very AI native, and kind of puts their craft, their function, whether you're an engineer or designer or product manager, they put that second to first and foremost being a builder. And when I say builder, I literally mean like someone who is like contributing code, opening up PRs and getting it reviewed and merging it. And then of course, like bring in each of our respective expertise, whether it's like building like really good data models if you're an engineer, or really come up with great user experience if you're a designer. But that's kind of secondary, and everybody is first and foremost a builder. And you're not so caught up on, what's the tech spec, what's the Figma, what's the PRD that you need to be able to start to build. They just start building and you iterate as you go along. I think that to me is what the future team looks like. And I want to try to figure out a way of how do we kind of expand this more, um, because I think it's going to be great for our customers.
Yeah, I mean, everyone is a builder now. With the rise of AI, you can not only, generate code, but also learn how it works. And I think that like
Yeah.
that self-improvement loop that
Yes.
can be
Yeah.
available for all of your, your teams. What's it look like for someone who's not an engineer to open a PR or try and improve the product at Gusto?
Mhm.
Have you had to change any of the processes or
Yeah.
what do you have to write skills so people know the code styles? How are you up leveling your own team to be
Right.
more AI native, especially because it's a moving target? I mean,
Yeah.
models keep getting better,
Yeah.
and practices may change. What's the practices you're bringing in every single day?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I learned a lot from this team, and in particular, like as I shared, we had four engineers and one designer. The designer's name was Katie, and she's not an engineer. She never really coded that much, um, and yet she was the most prolific coder. I actually looked at DX, which is a
Tool for analyzing how
analyzing
other
like
people
PR,
are
yeah, coding
contributing.
code,
Yeah.
and she's in the 94th percentile, and that's inclusive of all the engineers in R&D, right? So you take 20 people, she would be at the top of that. So I actually asked her, like, what was the magic here? Like, what made you so special? And she told me that there were essentially two things. One is that she's been a little bit more like technically curious, even though she wasn't a software developer. But she told me that the most important thing was that anytime she like would try to open up a PR, write some code using Claude Code, she would get a lot of support from the engineers around her, the four other engineers around her, who would actually sit down with her and give some feedback, tell her like why this version of code that Claude Code generated is good and why this one is bad. It didn't take that much time, but it did take some investment. And as long as she had like a support group of engineers that show her how to code, she was actually able to pick it up really quickly. And the dividends of this have paid off, let's say tenfold. For me, that was a really important takeaway, is that like you can't just tell someone that doesn't have a background in software engineering, just use Claude Code and code it. You just get a lot of like AI slop if that were to happen. You actually do need to kind of invest a little bit more in the support. Have a team that's willing to spend a little bit of time to teach like what does good code look like. And I think that's kind of the secret. Now that's unfortunately like not the fastest thing to do, but I think it is the most effective thing to do to kind of help form a company.
More and more businesses are being started. The data is clear. What does that future look like for these businesses? How are they going to operate in the future? What changes?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really exciting time to be a small business, or if you're even thinking about starting a small business, it's a really exciting time because it's never been easier, and I think it's an opportunity that's more accessible than has ever been. So I think first of all, I think we're going to see a lot more creative, colorful small businesses that really kind of brighten and enhance our communities. I mean, you look at any city like San Francisco, like what is it that makes it say this is a great city? And at the end of the day, it's a small business, right? It's like kind of how you feel walking around your commercial corridor or your neighborhood, right? Are there little like spots, hideaways that like you really love to go to? And I'm just so excited because I think we're going to see more and more of those. Many small businesses are going to get started, and I think a lot of it is going to come from this incredible new technology that they have access to.
Yeah, and when we look at like the failure mode of small businesses, I mean, it's so hard to start a business. Like you both
Yeah.
know as founders, how can technology help mitigate some of those failure modes? And what do you think some of the work that you're doing with co-founder, maybe it can actually help me have better business decisions
Yeah.
longer term. Is that kind of part of the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. Not only is it going to be easier to start a small business, but to have it continue to run is incredibly hard. Like there's any given quarter, like thousands of new compliance laws that come out that apply to small businesses. And it's really hard for a small business of oftentimes one or two people to figure out like how to stay on top of all this stuff. And it's so easy to make a mistake because it's overwhelming set of things that you need to do to keep a small business running. And so I think one of the things that we're going to see with AI and tools like Gusto Cofounder is that it's going to take care of all of those things for you. So the small business doesn't have to worry about it. They'll make less mistakes. They'll have a lot more time back so that they can think more strategically about their business or spend time on the craft that they're excited about that got them to start that small business in the first place. And it's going to just make it a lot more enjoyable and sustainable as well. I think a lot of small businesses, they shut down because, you know, we all hear it's an incredible amount of work. We think startup founders work hard. A small business owner works way harder, and oftentimes burnout is a big reason why they ultimately get shut down.
So, I mean, like the democratization of AI to the rest of the economy, to the small businesses is something I care a lot about. It seems so important to me
Yeah.
that we can't just have it be here in San Francisco for the venture
No.
backed companies.
Yeah.
The rest of the world needs to be able to gain from the benefits of this technology. And the work you're doing with co-founder seems to be a really big part of that. So
Right.
congratulations. It's super exciting. I'd love to kind of land with this last question, which is, for other people who want to build great AI agents that have impact, what would you advise? What would you tell them?
I would say that, like, just as we started, I would start with a really small team with a big idea and don't really try to overthink it with what is the final state? Like, do we have to have all the Figmas and error states mapped out? What does the tech spec or the architecture look like? Just get started. And the beautiful thing about software development today is that you can iterate on it so quickly. You can make three different mistakes and just delete all that code and like get it right the fourth time. And you could all do that within the course of a single day, right? And that was not possible. The cost of software development is incredibly low now. And that means that a lot of these processes that we've kind of invented over the past few decades on how to write software, they all came from this idea that the engineering resource is so scarce that you have to measure 10 times and cut once. You have to make sure that what you're building is gonna be the thing you build once. And that's no longer the case. Like you can build things 10 times over and over again because it's so cheap to write code. And so that's my advice is like if you want to get started on this, don't overthink it. Just get started. You can iterate on it. Um, and you don't really know how people are going to use the product anyways. And so just get started.
You can just ship things,
Just ship
right?
things. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Eddie, the energy is palpable. I'm so excited to see what you continue to build, and I really appreciate taking the time today. So thank you for
Thanks for
coming
having
by.
me. Yeah.